Hello and welcome to today's webinar on the heels of the IFA Convention. This is a panel discussion on all the top marketing takeaways with some of the top marketers who were there. I'm excited to be joined by Abby Fogel, the VP of Marketing and Brand Relations for Unleashed Brands, and Ashley Mitchell, the VP of Marketing for Streamline Brands. Larissa from ZBART was going to join us today, but she is sick. There's a few of us who didn't get back from Vegas without colds, COVID, or coughs. So we wish her the best of on the mend. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Erin Martin, the VP of Marketing at Netsertive. We have a lot to chat through in the next half hour, 40 minutes or so. So we'll jump right in, and reminder that we will send out the recording afterwards. And a little recap so everyone have those for takeaways. And then we do have the Q&A window open. So this is interactive. If you have a specific question, just pop it in, let us know, and we'll try to get to it as well. And before we kick it off, just a quick note about Netsertive. We're a digital marketing partner and top franchise supplier who uses our own proprietary tech to execute your localized digital marketing. We have over 100 franchise and multi-location brand partners, and we absolutely love what we do. So if you want to geek out on digital marketing, definitely hit us up. I know the IFA has given us a lot to talk about. So with that, I wanted to kick it off with the annual leadership conference. I know that one started out with a bang on Sunday, and I heard that it was actually one of the best days for marketers. And so, Ashley, just curious, what were some of the biggest takeaways that day for you?
Yeah, so the annual leadership conference is always one of my favorite portions of the IFA. You know, it gets a little pre-start to everything because it kicks off before the actual convention itself kicks off and all of that pre-conference stuff. So first of all, you get to see everybody for the first time. So that's always fun, everybody getting back together. And then it's also just so authentic. And I think that was really like the key takeaway of the whole leadership conference was being authentic and like leaning into things. The panel that was up there talking about the different challenges that they've had, they actually talked about real challenges they've had and how they not only overcame them, but then like pivoted them into something that was actually a benefit. When most of the time when people get up and they're speaking on panels, they're talking about all the shiny, great things that they do. And they're not talking about all of those. They'll have a challenge, but they use it as like, well, we have this challenge. We did this great thing and overcame it, where all of the panelists were just like, look, I had this thing and this was this issue that we had. And we figured out how to turn that into something that could be good, but also it was bumpy along the way. And it was just more transparent, I feel like, than other things tend to be. And I feel like the leadership conference always kind of has that impact on people.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I see that a lot as a podcast host as well, because there's a level of hesitancy to bear it all, like in something to like where you're showing the ugly side. And you always want to make sure that your brand as brand marketers is well polished and being presented the best way. So I love that they dug into that. Is there any case studies or examples that like stick out to you guys as some of those really cool examples or lessons learned from that day?
Yeah, I mean, the case study as a whole that was done. So for people that haven't gone to leadership conference, there's always like a presentation portion. The Crystal Compass Award is given away. So this year that was Michelle Rowan from Franchise Business Review, very well deserved on that. And then it goes into a case study portion where it's like, here's the information of pretend that you are the CEO of this company. Here's the challenges that they have. Figure out what would you do in this situation. So there's roundtables, everybody figures out the case study, and it's a real life case study. So this year it was Duck Donuts. So Betsy Ham, who's the CEO of Duck Donuts, got up there and talked about what they did. And that's something, you know, it really is just leaning into your culture and understanding what your team needs to be able to get them to that next level, and understanding like the people and how the people actually play a part in it, and really going back to basics. And I think that actually that theme, for me at least, carried out throughout the entire IFA. Of there's all these shiny things and, you know, AI and Chat.GPT, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, but not forgetting the basics. And I think that was something that, you know, really came out in a lot of the different sessions that I was in.
Yeah, I love that. I heard that a few times too, where it's like, yes, there's always like the shiny new things we got to test, but like there's so much work on the foundations. Like there's so much inspiration that you can get from other marketers on how to just do the foundations right. And Abby, was there anything that stuck out for you on that first day?
Yeah, so I would say also for those who haven't been to the annual leadership conference, as Ashley mentioned, it is the day before IFA actually kicks off. It's a smaller event, so it's also a nicer, like intimate setting. When you are doing the case studies, you're in roundtables, so you get to chat, meet some other people you may not meet, or meet people ahead of the actual event that you can kind of buddy system with if you don't know people at IFA. So that's great too. So it starts the day before, and it's actually put on by the Women's Franchise Committee, which I think is great. I'm a part of that committee, a group of women that actually orchestrate that. So while that's backed by, IFA in general, there's actually some key people from suppliers and franchisors, and other roles that are putting on that event. And each year they do a different theme, whether it's around leadership, modernizing leadership, and that sort of thing. But also piggybacking what Ashley said, I think there was like a just true vulnerability on the stage with the, fireside chat with the leaders. Again, we like to perceive everything as and telling like the good stories, but they got really vulnerable, even in their personal stories. And I also just think in today's day and age of social media and, the highlight reel of your life and not necessarily showing all the behind the scenes, especially for all of us in the business and franchising world who work so hard at our daily jobs and may also have personal struggles, family struggles, and things going on behind the scenes. They were really vulnerable about their leadership and going through those things and leading their teams and getting out of some of those hard challenges. So I personally just like really appreciated that because that also just showed the room of like, hey, everyone's going through struggles. Like we're all trying to build our brands, do the best in our roles we can. There's all this other stuff happening too in the background. I know Nicole Sala was one of them. We talked about just her struggle with like anxiety and how she worked through that and how she's a leader through that. And so I just think there was a lot of vulnerability. It was a great event to kick off IFA, and just again showed like no one's perfect and we're all just trying to do our best in our roles and grow our brands and be great leaders too. So really great, put on by the Women's Franchise Committee. As Ashley mentioned, Michelle Rowan getting the Crystal Compass Award is amazing. They also highlighted some of the previous Crystal Compass Award winners. So they always pick a female. Actually, doesn't have to be a female in franchising, just someone in franchising who has given back in great ways to the community. So great event. Like I said, smaller, intimate. So if you haven't signed up for that before, certainly check that out for next year. Always a day ahead from like 12 to 4-ish, and some really good content.
Nice. That's awesome.
And one thing I think that somebody said that I really like that struck a chord with me was that your job is to find somebody to do your job better than you so that you can move on to the next thing. And I think that's important for everybody to keep in mind is like to help other people, right? Like it's to help yourself, but it's also to help others. Like find somebody that can do better than you, teach them all the things that you need to teach them so that you can go do different things and then they can do your job better than you've done it in the past. And that helps everybody.
Yeah. And I think that theme was one of those foundations for me where I was like, okay, foundations, leading a team, people, like that is what it comes back to. And the more that you can, pull people and elevate them to be their best selves, then you're not pushing and driving performance, you're getting it out of them. And I think especially in kind of the distributed type of workplace that we have now, like more teams are, in different places, some have offices, working hybrid, like there's a different way of being able to motivate and like get people to lean in as leaders, as opposed to what we were doing before. So I think that was a big theme for me too.
Yeah.
And then getting into the meat of the conference, I know that there were roundtables, there were some sessions. Those roundtables are always hugely popular. I think both of the marketing roundtable sessions that I attended, there was also people that were just standing because they didn't have a seat and so many people were trying to attend. And so Ashley, I don't know for you, what were some of those main takeaways from any of the sessions or themes or the roundtables that you attended?
Yeah. So full disclosure, the first roundtable, to your point, they were so busy that I did not get in there right when it started. And then they were all totally full of people standing around them. And I was like, I'm going to make my own little roundtable over here. So I actually chatted with a couple other people, had some great takeaways from those conversations as well. To me, those are the things that are the most valuable. Like the sessions are great. And I always get little nuggets out of, whatever the different presentations are and things like that. But it's the roundtables or even, the happy hours and the parties and all of that stuff that is exhausting in some ways, but that's when you have the best conversations and you can actually like build those relationships or ask somebody about, something that you're dealing with that they've probably dealt with in the past, or even just have that relationship so you can later on call them and say, hey, by the way, remember when we were talking about X, Y, and Z? What do you do about this? And so to me, those are the biggest takeaways, are really just building those relationships. So I have people to lean on when I actually need something in the future, and vice versa. They know that they can always reach out to me too. So as much as the content is, like I said, you can take away little nuggets here and there. There's always some good stuff. The most valuable part for me is the stuff that happens outside of the sessions.
Yeah, that's funny. Abby, we were just talking about that.
Yeah, I agree. And Erin, you and I met last year at IFA, and then this year we were able to reconnect because we had connected throughout the year several times. The first time we actually met in person was last IFA, which is fun to remember the different people you've met at different years IFAs. But yeah, totally agree with that.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I was just sharing a story about how for my team, I'm trying to nurturing that type of networking and connecting with people to learn and grow and like build your marketing portfolio of knowledge. And that like, those are the opportunities where you could step in. And if you have a very specific question, be like, hey, how do you guys deal with this? How do you deal with that? And that's why the roundtables are so popular. I think, like, for example, people were just asking like, what's working for you? Like, what's not? And one thing that I kept hearing in a few different pockets that kind of came together was a lot of marketers using matching funds programs right now on the consumer marketing side to get more Z's invested. Where I was like, okay, I just literally heard 4 marketers who talked about how they've like, their year went so much better because they launched this matching fund program. Like, there's a tried and true best practice. And like, okay, that person I met at a round table, so now I could pick their brain on exactly what they did. There's a few of those like nuggets that get pulled out, which is great.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other big themes like that from you guys in terms of takeaways when you kind of step back and think about the entire event and like what you personally took away or want to do with your team? I know usually people come home and they're like, okay, I've got like way too many ideas, like, but there's 2 things we're actually going to do, or like other vendors we're going to check out, or initiatives we'll do. What did that look like for you, Ashley?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is kind of what I mentioned about like going back to basics and like, yes, the shiny things, we have to look into all of those, but somebody mentioned, I think it might have been in the digital breakout, about like going through your customer journey as a customer and seeing what are the holes that are missing, because you're looking at it from the wrong side of it. And that's something that I think we did it way back when we redid our website. We've done it a little bit as we've, done some additional programs, but never had just like purely outside. As I'm going through the process, if I'm trying to enroll my child in swim lessons, how hard are we making it on them? What pieces might we be missing in that customer journey that we think, because they're just like common knowledge, that they should know, that they don't know? So that's something that we're going to do, is make sure that we're going through it and seeing it from the consumer side, because I'm sure we're missing stuff. I'm sure there's holes that we have to plug. We're not doing it perfectly. So that's something that was a really actionable thing to take away.
Yeah, I love that. Any other themes on your end, Abby?
Yeah, the one thing I would say, I really enjoyed the general session with Drew Brees. I mean, I'm not even like a huge like football person in general, but I thought he was great, just like telling his story of how he loved the like number 9 at Jimmy John's. That's how he got into franchise ownerships. Now he's doing things with walk-ons and some other brands. And so I thought he was great, just talking about the franchise business model as a whole. And he also talked a lot about like fighting for your team to win and like doing whatever you can for your team to win. And I think a lot of us, work with our teams regularly, but actually, being in battle, like with your team and fighting for your brand. So I just think he had a good kind of like culture and relating back to your team message. I also think we heard probably more than the other IFAs that I remember in past years, just more about the franchising model as a whole. And so I think we heard a lot about that in the main stage from Matt Haller and others, and Drew Brees in general too. But just what we're doing to protect the franchising model, I think was also a big topic. I know not certainly specifically marketing related, but could be related to marketers, as far as how are you using your brand to promote and protect the franchising model in general, which I don't think a lot of marketers are kind of focused on that specifically. I mean, we have so many roles as marketers, so we need one more thing to focus on, right? But I did think that was something I heard at IFA a lot more than I had in years past, just about the franchising model and how the IFA is working to protect franchising. and how there are significant things that could impact what we are doing today as franchisors. And yeah, loved hearing from Drew Brees just about his experience as how he got into franchise ownership, what he's doing, promoting it as a great way to make a living and as an income replacement model for entrepreneurs. So he was one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think that's so true from like the two sides of it. I mean, for me, just being a part of the franchise industry, like everyone should be so proud about what we're doing and how we're contributing to the economy and what our local businesses are doing and our brands are doing in local communities. So like that piece of it, I think is personally fulfilling. But I think you're right, Abby, on the marketing side, like reinforcing like, yes, like this is a national brand that you might see everywhere, but it's a mom and pop owner. Like you probably know this person, it's a member of your community. So like making sure that comes through in the marketing is so important as well.
Yeah, I agree.
I know one session I wanted to ask you guys about, just because you guys both had brand representation on the panel. The session was on building kind of that better, I'm blanking on what the actual name was, but like building a platform company when you have multiple brands. And I think there was a general theme throughout some other roundtables I attended where it was like, okay, how do you build stronger shared services on your marketing team, or just better in-house marketing capabilities? Like, how do you bolster that for better growth? And just that theme of, there's a rising need to gain efficiencies in how you structure your MarTech stack and your marketing team. Like whether it's like PE and VC money coming in and putting some more pressure on it, or just like as marketers, we're always trying to do more with less. So there's this bigger need here. And it was Paul Gerard, Ashley, your guys' COO from Streamline Brands, and then Scott Perry, the CFO of Unleash Brands. And so I remember Paul said, like, okay, like if you're going to have efficiencies, there's like 3 ways you do it. Like you're either going to have your master MarTech system that can do everything. You're going to have different tech and tools that you make sure integrates so that you, end of the day, do have one master system, or you're building it yourself. And his recommendation was like, okay, when you're trying to think about how you build the best marketing engine, his recommendation was do the best of class tools and capabilities and integrate it, and then ensure that you get all that data back. And then similarly, I think Scott's piece of advice was for shared services, like how you guys do it is thinking about the C-suite, back office, and then data and analytics is one huge place where you guys kind of centralize and are getting a lot of different capabilities and value add. And then also being able to build some really good talent that's on your team to be able to help with all of them. So I don't know, that's just a few of the takeaways from that session. I was wondering if you guys had any additional ideas or insights, knowing that, you're closer to the brand, and how you guys think about building your own efficiencies as well. Maybe Ashley, kick it off if you have anything to add.
Okay, I'll go first. I mean, Paul is correct in what we do is the best in class, and how do they integrate? It's something that we did previously have some internal, like build it your own systems. And when it got down to it, it was, do we want to be a tech company, or do we want to be a franchisor that utilizes tech? Because if we built it all ourselves in the way that we wanted to do it, yes, it was built for our business, but we would have had to pour millions and millions of dollars into it. And then it was like, is that what the one thing we're going to focus on when some people have already done it, and how can we integrate that and then adjust it to our business? So that's kind of like the route we've gone. That's like the reasoning behind it. And it's working for us for sure. And then we look at the, shared services as, it depends on what things make sense to be shared services and what things don't, and what things are kind of a little bit of a combination. So there are some things, like for us, the marketing team we focus on all of our brands, like we all touch all of them, but we need to have somebody who really understands swim labs to be able to help us make sure that we're translating everything correctly for that. And somebody that really understands Safe Splash and all of those things. So we do it that where we have like kind of like a it's like a layered model where it's not all that they focus on, but there's having somebody that is an expert kind of in that thing. And then from a data perspective, similar, like, so we are backed by Rourke. Rourke has a huge data team. We lean into that as much as we need to and can, so that we can give them all the information, but they don't have the color. So we actually do have an internal person that is an analyst as well, because he has the color behind what those numbers are actually saying and can give real meaning to it, more than just the data engine can give us all of the information. It's like, well, then what are we going to do with the data? So that requires somebody that has a little more in the weeds on our side.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, Abby, how does that look on your guys' end?
Yeah, so we have gone through just a lot of, I would say, changes here to recognize synergies in between our brands and our home office staff. In the last year, we've hired over 100 people just to continue to support the brands in our system and really recognize who needs to be where and where a subject matter expert needs to be and who our departments support. And so marketing specifically, we've been building out an in-house basically agency to support all of our 6 brands. That's not everything. We're still working with a lot of really great vendors out there to supplement what we do internally. More so in like the design realm is what we're doing in-house to support them, and rolling out a ticketing system so that all of our brands are using one system. They flow into one nice little place where they can keep track of that and get things back to franchisees in a timely manner. And so for marketing, we are, doing this in-house agency. We also still have representatives at each brand too. So, there's people that support all 6, and there's people that might be, we've got VPs of marketing. Yeah, for instance, Jamie at the Little Gym. She's the VP of marketing at the Little Gym, and that's her, her brand and who she champions while being a part of all 6. And then there's some people that in the shared services. And so marketing, we have shared services. Franchise development is a shared service as well. That's where I sit on the franchise development marketing team. And we work to develop, marketing strategies, content, websites, all kinds of things for all of our franchise opportunities. And then we have what we would call like our enterprise platforms. And so that would be, our tech stack, which is basically what we call the command center. Our franchisees have access to that to look at their day-to-day operations and also benchmark against each other. And then some of the things that we're also working on right now, again, not marketing related, but is streamlining our supply chain. And so we've rolled out a Supply X, which is what we're calling it. And that is a shared service. So all the merchandise that comes to our brand, so whether you buy a t-shirt at Urban Air or you buy gloves at Premier Martial Arts, you're buying that through a system that Unleashed Brands can use the buying power of all the brands. I mean, that's the benefit of the platform, right? Like you're talking to 2 people who are on platforms. And so we understand kind of the benefit of the buying power, and also with marketing, the buying power that you can get when you're buying media in bulk, which is what we do at Unleashed Brands. You buy it in bulk and then distribute it to the brand. So there's a lot of synergies and cost savings there from being in a platform, and the shared services under our platform, I think, is becoming more and more popular for franchisors, recognizing that people who are subject matter experts can support multiple category leading brands versus just one person being over here as a subject matter expert and the same person being in the same seat. And so I think that's really interesting just to see in the franchise industry. I think it's opening up some cool roles for people. I've seen some different roles in the last year in marketing specifically just come out in franchising, which is fun to see some different roles that people are taking on.
Yeah. And I think, to piggyback on that, when Abby's saying that they've done a lot of different things, moving people around, hiring all these people, we also all are building the plane as we're flying it, right? Like everybody is like, I think that all of us are like shifting and deciding like, okay, what is working? What is something that can be that shared service? Do we try it this way? And then it's like, no, we need somebody in the brand, or, or vice versa. We have all these people in brands sitting in those same seats, and can we be more efficient and pull that up to a platform level and then have them sit in the brands. And I think that it's constantly evolving because we're all just kind of figuring it out. And especially then with every new acquisition too, I think every acquisition is different. Every single one of them, you can have a process and a plan, and then there is some little idiosyncrasy that's different, that integration is going to look different. So we're all just kind of figuring it out as we go along, as much as we'd like to be like, oh, this is perfect. Back to that authenticity thing, it's not.
Yeah. And Heather McLeod was also on that panel. And I remember she said something exactly about integration. She was like, even with acquisitions, you meet the team, like, you know, some key people really well, but you're also acquiring a ton of people that you've never met, you don't know, have no idea their skill set. So like, again, back to people and the power of people, like, you could all of a sudden like end up with 4 data scientists that are like insane, and all of a sudden you have this in-house capability that you didn't before, or there's knowledge somewhere else. So it's like every situation, every team, every acquisition's different. And it's kind of like, how do you workshop and figure out that roadmap to figure out what is that right next step? Which I guess is our everyday, no matter what is our right next step to building what we're trying to do. Awesome. We'll definitely have to touch on the hottest session topic, the one that was like standing room only. I literally saw some people in the hallway, which was the AI and Chat.GPT session. And even if you didn't attend it, I think literally every conversation, it felt like a roundtable either started with it, mentioned it, or ended with it of like, okay, well, how are we going to do this? I think there was some really good key takeaways for me in terms of how I could use it from a marketing perspective, but I don't know, just in general, your guys' hot take on the trend of I can't even say it quickly anymore, GPT. What are like the main takeaways for you guys and where it's at right now? And Ashley, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, there are so many. I think my biggest takeaway was I knew there were all these, a bunch of tools out there. There are so many more than I even like had any idea about, and like that people knew a lot about. And I'm like, I've heard like peripherally some of these things, but some of the things they were talking about, I was like, I've never heard of this, and it's amazing. So Patty Rother mentioned this, that's not really marketing related, but it's going to change my life if I can figure out how to make it work. I've been playing around with them. A couple different things that you can like have join your meetings and they take notes for you. And she said that she'll send it in her place. And I'm like, oh my goodness, with my calendar, that would be amazing if I could just
that was Otter
my place.
Yeah, I just started using that.
I just started, so I got it loaded into our system. I've only tried it once, but now it does remind me every time before a meeting starts. Have you guys had this yet too, where it's like, do you want Otter to join your meeting?
Yeah.
With every meeting that I have? So playing around with that, because I think that could be amazing if it could just take all of my notes and give me like a recap and say who has to do what. That would be awesome. So that's a huge one that's not marketing related, but will be when it saves my life. And then also just the importance of, and I knew this going into it, but this is like how we're playing around with it, is using the tools to like as a jumping off point, but then not losing that human touch. Like we're starting to play around with it for some content pieces, whether it's writing some ad copy or blogs or things like that. But ultimately we do have a brand voice, and we have to make sure that it fits that brand voice. And so we don't want to just, we're not just going to put information in there and whatever it spits out, take. So keeping that like human touch with it, and then just getting better at writing prompts, because it's only as good as what the information that you put in. So that's just kind of how we're dabbling in it right now. Time will tell where it actually goes, but that's where we're at.
Yeah. And that's why I like Jasper, because Jasper's another like AI content writing type tool, like focused on the writing piece of it. And when I've used it, it's nice because they have a little section that's called recipes, which is basically like pre-written prompts to get you going in the right direction, so that you can add context to the input for better output. So I think that was one of the big trends too, was like, AI is not going to replace your job, but you might see some actual jobs for prompt writers now, and like people that get the algorithm to be able to interpret it and work with it correctly. That was a new one for me. I was like, prompt writing. Okay. And Abby, what's your hot take on it these days?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. I think everyone's interested in it, definitely for content writing, for blogs, social. I even think for emails. So for recruiters who are doing outreach to prospects, can be great to get you some just email content and some templates for you to use. Also for your customer journey, whether on the friend dev side or consumer side. I think it's really interesting there. I will be interested to see how franchisors maybe monitor how franchisees are using it, especially with like being able to create images. It is insane what you can do in some of the images I've seen created out of that. And so I just wonder how franchisors are going to monitor franchisees like creating content with it, because it's very easy. Like everyone can sit on their couch and be watching whatever and create a blog about a brand. And to Ashley's point about maintaining that brand voice, you want to make sure that it's honed in correctly. And from an image standpoint too, it might look cool, but is it an accurate representation of your brand? And so as this kind of evolves, I'll be interested, much like how schools are putting, rules around this being used in the school system and education system, how franchisors are going to maybe monitor their franchisees with it. But I certainly think it's very cool. I think we're all playing with it right now and can be a huge benefit to marketers from a content standpoint, as far as blog, social, and customer journeys. But that's kind of one thing that I'm just interested in to see how far we get along with that and what people implement to maybe safeguard their brand.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important with the compliance piece because, if you do get someone who's decently savvy and wants to play around with something and they start producing, just like mass producing blog posts, like definitely Google's writing a bunch of algorithms to be able to identify just like AI written, blog posts that don't have any personality and are just, chatbot created or whatever. So there's going to be some type of ramification if you're just like spamming all that content out there without personalizing it and making it true to your brand. So I think there's some real like downstream ramifications as like everything evolves quickly that you have to be on top of as a marketer, for sure. I think a few other
talking about.
Oh, what did you say, Ashley?
I said add one more thing to that list Abby was talking about at the
Yes. Make sure everyone's not going rogue with their AI tools.
Yeah.
There's a few cool other examples that they gave in that session too, that just like beyond the world of marketing to think about, like, you don't just have to write a blog post or an ad, even though that's helpful, but it's like writing job descriptions or getting ideas for job descriptions for specific roles. Like instead of spending an hour perfecting it, like get the ugly first draft written and then tweak it to personalize it, and boom, maybe it takes you 10 minutes. Like that's a real efficiency. They also mentioned AI for writing code, which I won't even try to talk about, but that blows my mind. Answering reviews, just product market research. I mean, there's so much where you can just get a ton of inspiration and use it as that launching point. It doesn't have to be the, just end written content. It's like, use it to bounce ideas off of, Yeah,
I feel like for scripts for your team, for those also who may have like call centers at the franchisor level, you could also use it for scripts for your team who's answering, all kinds of different questions from customers.
Yeah, that was another good one too. The just CX everything. Awesome. Well, is there any other big things you guys want to throw out there before we wrap up? I think we're at the half hour. I know that we're all still, I think, fully recovered by now. There's a few resources that we got. I think I personally got from the AI session that I can share in the follow-up as well if people are interested, which were really cool guides and takeaways and inspiration. I even think after this session, I think there's a cool AI session by Patty Rother, who we mentioned, about more AI stuff. So I know that conversation will continue and we'll have more goodness to share. But ladies, thanks for joining. Oh yeah, go. Yeah, add it in.
The only other IFA thing that I thought was cool that I kind of just saw was vendors and suppliers doing more like interactive events instead of just like stuffy dinners, which I appreciate. Like I know Netsertive did one. That was really cool. There was another vendor who had one that was like had an ice bar like within the main area, which was really cool. And so I just thought it was neat that some vendors and suppliers are going away from just like stuffy dinners and having more interaction in their dinners, which also promotes like better networking, because then you're not confined to one seat like the whole night next to one person that you only get to talk to. And so I thought that was cool to just see at this IFA too. I just noticed that there was more fun happy hours, interactive events by suppliers and vendors versus just a like, let's go sit down at a dinner with 10 people. And so I really appreciated that like innovation from different ways that we can network outside of the content sessions.
Yeah, I love that. And so true.
Totally agree with that.
Yes, Ashley was at one of our tarot card reading events. So that's what we did. We did a tarot card reading to be able to see what was in the future for us as marketers, which was very fun. And I think
I know all about my future now. Wasn't allowed to tell anyone for 6 days to let my energy settle, but now I've shared and feeling good about it.
My lady told me I needed to readjust my energy. So that is my goal for the next few weeks, apparently. I don't have the best energy and my energy chakra needs to be reestablished, but
I personally enjoy your energy. So
thank you. I appreciate mine as well. I'm like, okay, I don't know about this. But it is fun to get up and move around, especially after like sitting in seats all day, like meeting people, just like how we kicked it off. Like that's what this is all about, is like, you know, we've survived COVID, like let's get back to in-person fun events and meet each other. So anyone who missed it, definitely come next year in Phoenix, and then we'll be back in Vegas. So we'll see everyone there. And thank you ladies so much for joining. It was fun to have you guys on and see you in person a few weeks ago. And thanks to everyone who joined. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.